This is Washington Watch, and I'm Tony Perkins, the website, tonyperkins.com. Well, 2 years after the Capitol building was closed to the public in response to COVID, plans are finally underway for a reopening. But it is a three-phased opening, with business as usual not returning until after Labor Day. Now, museums, stadiums, theaters, businesses, and workplaces are open across the country. But the U.S. Capitol can't fully reopen until September. Citizens' right to petition Congress is directly enshrined in the Constitution, making it long past time for the People's House to fully open, allowing the American people access to their government. Joining me now is a leader in this effort to reopen the Capitol, Congressman Bryan Steil. He is a member of the Committee on House Administration and House Financial Services Committee and represents Wisconsin's 1st Congressional District. Congressman, welcome back to the program.
Thanks for having me on.
All right, you have been very clear that this proposed three-phase opening is not good enough. Tell us why.
It's woefully inadequate for a couple reasons. One, it doesn't fully reopen the United States Capitol in the House of Representatives until Labor Day. We need to rip the Band-Aid off these COVID-era policies immediately and get our way of life back. Two, we still have a process here in the House of Representatives where individuals have to be invited to come and speak to their member of Congress. You'd almost think the Democrats were nervous about having constituents come here to the Hill to talk about higher costs, to talk about failed energy policies, to talk about the fact that the Democrats won't secure the border, and the list goes on. And third, we have individuals coming to the United States Capitol from school groups all across the country this spring. And instead of allowing tours of the United States Capitol, the bastion of democracy, what we're seeing is Nancy Pelosi dramatically limiting tours to all these school groups coming in. It just makes your heart sink for these students.
Yeah, this is something that is a once in a lifetime for many of these kids to be able to come to Congress, see how our government is supposed to work. Now, Congressman, some of your colleagues have used the excuse that, well, security is an issue. We still have January 6th to deal with. In fact, Congressman Gerald Conley of Virginia said this. This was last year. When discussing the opening of the Capitol, he said, for some lawmakers, just seeing members of the public back in the Capitol building could bring back memories of that violent day. You know, I don't mean to be offensive, but you know what? I think it's time for them to put on their big boy pants and either go to work and allow the American people to have access to their government or get another job, quite frankly.
Yeah, we just have to rip the Band-Aid off of all of these COVID-era policies, off of all the January 6th excuses as it relates to allowing members of the public access to the United States Capitol and access to come and share their grievances with their members of Congress. It's no doubt that we're seeing a lot of excuses from the left. Originally, it was COVID. That was the original reason the United States Capitol and the House office building closed over 2 years ago. The tune is shifted, and now it's a little more January 6th than it is COVID. But again, it's excuse after excuse rather than reopening the Capitol. We have the tools in the toolkit to make sure that members of the public and members of Congress are safe and secure. And we can do that by reopening the House office buildings and allowing individuals to come in, share their grievances with their members of Congress, and obtain a tour of the Capitol. It's beyond frustrating that Nancy Pelosi continues to keep the United States Capitol and the House closed.
Are you seeing any movement from the other side of the aisle among Democrats to say, yeah, it is time to reopen?
Maybe a little tiny bit, but they don't want it to reopen. They don't want to allow us to get our way of life back. They don't want to return to normal. They want to create a new normal going forward. That's what's so darn frustrating. House office buildings used to be fully open to the public. You'd be able to come in, walk through basic airport style security, come in and meet with your member of Congress. Now you're not allowed in the building without an invitation. So any member that doesn't want to meet with a constituent that's upset has the ability to keep them outside the building. That's absurd. We need to be working in the opposite direction to allow members of the public to come in and share their frustrations with all the crazy policies that are going on in Washington, D.C. right now.
Right. And even for those of us who are in D.C. working, even to get to the Capitol is such a hassle. And so most of the time it's not worth the hassle because it takes so much time to clear all the hurdles to get in for meetings on Capitol Hill.
Yeah, absolutely. And what Nancy Pelosi and the House Democrats are doing is making it more difficult for people to come in. It's always been a challenge. I understand that, but they're adding to the burden. They're adding in requirements. They're tracking who comes into the United States, House Representatives office buildings. It is just kind of disgraceful what they've done and their work to continue to prevent us from just getting our way of life back up here on Capitol Hill and across the country.
Well, Congressman Steil, I appreciate you joining us today, and I appreciate you pushing for the Capitol to be reopened to the American people.
Thank you very much.
All right. And, I'm quite frankly, I'm tired of hearing this January 6th thing. Again, and I'll just restate it. If they can't, if they can't deal with reality and go to work, then they need to find another job. And look, we had a shooting at FRC 10 years ago by a Southern Poverty Law Center incited LGBTQ activist. And guess what? We were back at work the next day. I have no sympathy for those who want to be shielded from the American public. That's what it's all about. Because they cannot tolerate being challenged for their destructive policies that they're pushing on America. Okay, I got that off my chest. Coming up next, we're going to be joined by Kristen Wagner, lead attorney with Alliance Defending Freedom. She was on Yale University campus for a free speech event. But the students, they can't tolerate free speech. What does that say about the future of the legal system in America? We talk about it next here on Washington Watch.